The motorcycle roared into the convenience store parking lot just as the sun began its descent behind the warehouse district, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Marcus had ridden through 3 states in 2 days, his leather jacket bearing the dust of 1,000 miles, his beard gray with road grit and years. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, feeling every one of his 62 years in his bones. The custom Harley beneath him represented everything he had left after the divorce, after his daughter stopped returning his calls, after the company he'd built for 30 years was sold to corporate strangers who didn't know his name. This bike, this freedom, this endless highway was supposed to heal something broken inside him. But 3 months into his journey across America, Marcus felt more lost than ever. He was reaching for his helmet when he noticed her. An elderly woman, perhaps in her 80s, struggling with a shopping bag that had split at the bottom. Cans of soup rolled across the parking lot like escaping prisoners, and she bent slowly, painfully, trying to gather them while balancing on a wooden cane that looked as weathered as she did. Her husband, equally aged and moving with the cautious steps of someone who'd learned that falling could mean never getting back up, tried to help but could only manage one can at a time. They looked at each other with the kind of understanding that comes from 50 years of shared struggle, and in that glance, Marcus saw something that made his chest tighten. Without thinking, he swung off the bike and jogged toward them, his heavy boots thudding against the pavement. The woman looked up at him with startled blue eyes, and Marcus realized too late how he must appear. 6'3", covered in road dirt, tattoos creeping up his neck, rings on every finger, and a beard that hadn't seen scissors in half a year. He was the kind of man people crossed streets to avoid, the kind grandmothers clutched their purses around. He stopped short, suddenly uncertain, but she smiled. It was a smile that transformed her entire face, turning decades of wrinkles into laugh lines, and she said in a voice surprisingly strong, "Well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? My knight in leather armor." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. He dropped to his knees on the dirty asphalt, not caring about his expensive jeans, and began gathering cans. Tomato soup, chicken noodle, vegetable beef. Simple foods that told a story of fixed incomes and careful budgeting. The husband, whose name tag from a long-ago job still clung to his worn jacket reading, Harold, extended a shaking hand. "Name's Harold. This is my Margaret. We're real grateful for the help, son." Son. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. His own father had been gone 15 years. His daughter, Emma, 28 now, had called him that once. Dad, son. Simple words that carried the weight of belonging, of being part of something bigger than yourself. He hadn't heard either in what felt like forever. He cleared his throat and gathered the last can. "I'm Marcus. And it's no trouble at all. Where's your car? I'll help you carry everything." Margaret's smile faltered. "We don't drive anymore. Harold's eyes aren't what they used to be, and I never did get my license. We live just 6 blocks that way." She pointed down a street lined with chain-link fences and struggling businesses. "Usually we manage just fine, but that bag boy must have overloaded this bag, and I suppose I should have noticed before we got all the way out here, but you know how it is when you're thinking about supper and whether you left the stove on." She was talking faster now, the way people do when they're embarrassed, and Marcus understood with sudden clarity that these 2 proud people had been managing, just barely, in a world that had moved on without them. How many times had they struggled home with groceries? How many times had they been invisible to younger, faster people who had places to be in problems that seemed more urgent than an old couple trying to make it through another week? "I'll give you a ride," Marcus heard himself say. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Harold and Margaret. "Both of you. On my bike. It'll take 2 trips, but I've got nothing but time." Harold started to protest, something about not wanting to be a burden, but Margaret cut him off with a look that suggested she'd been cutting him off with that same look since Eisenhower was president. "Harold, hush. This young man is offering us kindness. We're going to accept it gracefully." She turned to Marcus, her eyes suddenly moist. "But I don't know how we'd manage on that machine. We're not exactly built for motorcycles anymore." Marcus found himself grinning. really grinning, for the first time in months. Margaret, I've carried bigger loads than you two through worse terrain. Trust me, I'll take Harold first with the groceries, then come back for you. Unless you'd rather ride first. Margaret's laugh was like wind chimes. Oh, let Harold go first. That way if you dump him in a ditch, I'll know to walk home. 20 minutes later, Marcus had made 2 trips down those 6 blocks to a small house that had seen better decades but was kept with obvious pride. The lawn was mowed in perfect stripes, flowers bloomed in window boxes, and a flag hung straight on its pole. Harold's hands had shaken as he climbed off the bike, but his eyes had been alive with something Marcus recognized as the ghost of youth, that memory of what it felt like to be strong and fearless and free. Margaret had been lighter than Marcus expected, her bird-like bones pressing against his back as she held on, and when he helped her down, she'd patted his bearded cheek and said, "You're a good boy, Marcus. Your mama raised you right." He didn't correct her about his mother, who'd been too busy with her own addictions to raise him at all. He just stood there in their driveway, this grizzled biker who looked like he'd been spit out by the highway, and felt tears sting his eyes for the first time since he'd left home. Harold insisted on getting him a glass of sweet tea, and before Marcus knew what was happening, he was sitting at their kitchen table, surrounded by photographs of a life well lived. Children grown and moved away. Grandchildren they saw once a year if they were lucky. Harold had been a mechanic in the Air Force. Margaret had been a schoolteacher. They'd been married 53 years, had buried 2 children and raised 3 more, had survived wars and recessions and heartbreaks that would have destroyed lesser people. "You remind me of our youngest," Margaret said suddenly, studying Marcus's face with those sharp blue eyes. "Not in looks, you understand, but in here." She tapped her chest over her heart. "He's lost too. Thinks he has to keep moving to outrun whatever's chasing him. But honey, whatever you're running from, it's right there in the saddle with you. It goes wherever you go." Marcus stared at his tea glass, watching condensation run down the sides like tears he wouldn't let himself shed. "I don't know how to go back," he whispered. "I said things, did things. My daughter, she won't even answer my calls. I thought if I just left, got away from everything, I could figure out how to be someone better. But I think I'm just the same angry, disappointed man in different zip codes." Harold reached across the table and gripped Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. "Son, I'm going to tell you something I learned when I was about your age. There ain't no destination where you arrive and suddenly become who you want to be. That person, that better version, he's built one choice at a time, one kindness at a time, one moment when you do the hard thing instead of the easy thing. You helped an old couple with their groceries today. That's one choice. Tomorrow you'll have another choice. Then another. String enough of those together, and one day you look back and realize you've become someone your daughter would be proud to know." They talked until the sun set completely, until the tea pitcher was empty and Margaret had insisted Marcus stay for dinner. He ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes at their table, simple food that tasted like forgiveness, and when he finally stood to leave, Margaret pressed something into his hand. It was a small photo, creased and faded, showing a young couple on a motorcycle. Harold and Margaret, 50 years younger, grinning at the camera with the kind of joy that believes the future is unlimited. "We were lost once too," she said quietly. "Everyone is, at some point. But we found our way by helping each other. By being kind even when we didn't feel like it. By remembering that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. You helped us today, Marcus. More than you know. Now I want you to help yourself. Call your daughter. Don't wait until it's too late." Marcus rode away from that house with the photograph tucked in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. He pulled over 2 blocks away and sat on his bike in the gathering darkness, his phone in his hand, staring at Emma's number. His thumb hovered over the call button for what felt like hours. Then he thought about Margaret's smile, about Harold calling him son, about how a simple act of kindness had somehow cracked open the armor he'd built around himself. He pressed the button. Emma's voice, when she answered, was cautious. "Dad." "Hey, baby girl," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'm hoping you'll let me try to be better. To be the dad you deserved all along." There was a long pause, and in that silence, Marcus heard everything he'd been running from and everything he needed to run toward. Then Emma said, "Where are you, Dad?" And Marcus, looking up at the stars beginning to appear above the gas station, above the convenience store, above the small house 6 blocks away where 2 elderly angels had shown him that salvation comes in the smallest moments of human connection, finally knew the answer. He was exactly where he needed to be. He was on his way home.